I'm getting a little bit ambitious tonight with my cooking, especially for being a non-cook. As you know, I am known as non-cook Natalie. But I'm making a salad and it needs something extra to go with it. It's supposed to have some hearty bread with it, bread rolls. I'm gonna go ahead and put together a bread that I do pretty frequently. I'm gonna do it a little bit differently because I want a little bit of variety in what I've done before. But it's a very simple bread. I mix all the dried ingredients in one bowl, and instead of actually measuring them out with my measuring cups, I'm going to weigh the ingredients on a scale because the recipe has it that way. This recipe for this bread is from Ela Vegan, so ELAVEGAN.com, and she is gluten-free, but you can make this bread with whole wheat if you want. You could make it with any kind of flours that you want, so it will turn out just as good. Mix and match your flours. Make sure they're whole grain for your best quality of bread. You're going to use the standard recipe uses buckwheat, and I ran out of buckwheat flour, so I have two options. I can either substitute some sorghum and oat flour, and my oat flour happened to be a mixture or a blend of buckwheat and oats. So I could use that, or I could actually take the buckwheat and grind it up in my blender or my food processor so that it's a finely ground flour. And again, it's gonna be whole grain buckwheat. So that would be very good. It might be a little bit more of a coarser type bread, but these breads are very heavy, very coarse, very delicious whole grain breads, and you can toast them, use them with soups. I usually slice the loaf and put it in the freezer, and we take out the slices as we need, just like if you bought some kind of bread like Ezekiel bread, which is whole grain and lentil flours. This one has buckwheat. It has a lentil flour, so not a lentil, a bean flour. Chickpea, but you could use a lentil flour if you had it, but I use the chickpea flour for it. And it calls for white rice flour. I use brown rice flour, but if I didn't have this, I could substitute sorghum again. Another substitution that could be made would be teff flour. That's another one that I have on hand that might be really interesting to add. So teff, oat, rye, what's another one? Corn flour could be used in it also. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll use a coarse flour, a medium flour, and then a very fine flour. And of those, you're going to use 100 grams of each. And that's why in this recipe, she has it set up so that we can just weigh it out in our bowl. So when it gets to 100 grams, you're done. Then you put your next one in, and then you're done. And then the only thing that has to be measured are the baking powder, the baking soda, and the salt are the ones that need to be measured. And then pumpkin seeds. You can use pumpkin, you can use sunflower, you could probably use sesame seeds if you want to. So let's try it. And I'll show you as I go along what that looks like. You don't really have to watch me weigh everything out, but we'll show you what it looks like in the bowl. At the beginning of this recipe, turn on your oven and get your little bowl of psyllium ready, because this is going to be your thickener and your liquid. And it's going to be a combination of, the psyllium is 450 milliliters or 1.8 cups. That's a funny amount of water. And I found it was easier to measure 450 milliliters. And then it's going to have 3 tablespoons of the psyllium. And then you're going to let it set for, I think it said 20 to 30 minutes, but this sets up really quickly. So, and some people just add the liquid and the psyllium directly to the dry ingredients, and they have very good luck that way too. So very easy to put together. The hardest part is the 10 minutes of kneading the dough at the end, and you'll see how that goes. I'll show you. So I'll just show you what this looks like. I'm weighing everything out on my little scale here. And these are all the dry ingredients that I put in. I decided to use was sweet sorghum, the teff flour, the garbanzo flour, and tapioca. Now you can use different flours. Like I said, they should be whole grain. As long as they're whole grain, you're going to get a healthier bread. But I really think you should make sure you have either a pea flour or, like this is garbanzo flour. So a pea or garbanzo would be really good. A teaspoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda. I put 3 tablespoons of the psyllium, and I did, to measure out my 1.8 cup, I did 2 cups, and then I took out 3.5 tablespoons. 3.5 tablespoons is about 1.8 cup. And there'll be a little bit of variation because flours have a different amount of moisture in them. So when you're kneading it, or you know, if it's sticking to everything, you might need a little bit more tapioca flour on the board to keep it from sticking. And then here is the psyllium. I mean, it's almost solid in here. Psyllium and water. And I don't even think it's been 20 minutes, but it gets really stiff like that. So I'll be just mixing all these flours together with a fork or a spoon. Make sure they're all, you know, your baking soda and everything is mixed in. The great thing about this bread is not necessarily that it's gluten-free or corn-free or anything like that, because you have the option of using whatever flours you want to make this the healthiest bread that you can. And you get lots of, you know, options and variations when you start looking at flours out there that you can use for this. So the great thing about this bread is, number one, it's quick. Number two, it's very nutritious, and it is loaded with fiber, not just from these whole grains, but from the psyllium that goes into it also. So it's a really dense, delicious bread. I think last time, I just remember that I put the 3/4 teaspoon of salt in this, and I forgot that. And you don't want to forget the salt, because you'll notice it. You'll notice that it needs that tiny bit of salt to really bring out the flavors and make it a really nice bread. So, okay, I'm going to just show you, before I go, I'll show you how this psyllium goes. Let me just show you how this goes. So you just take this and you scoop it out of the bowl. It comes out pretty well. Plop it into the flours, and then start by stirring it first, because you'll want to get all of those flours mixed into this thing. But it's this big jelly thing in the middle of your, it's this big gel-like thing in the middle of your flour. Sorry about that. I don't know if you can see it. So I plop it in there. It's this big gel-like thing in the middle of your dish of flour, your bowl of flour, and just keep stirring it. And eventually it'll get to the point where you can just use your hands to knead all of that in, all of that flour. And I know it looks like a lot of flour is not going to go into that jelly roll, but it will. It will. So just keep working at it. It takes about 10 minutes. You get a little bit sticky. Put a little tapioca flour on your hands and you'll get it mixed in. And then you get to shape it into whatever shape you want. So you can shape it into rolls or a baguette and make some cuts in it like they do in the movies. And then if you want it into like a round loaf or a, you know, just a plumper loaf, you can make it that way too. You get to choose. So I have really messy hands, and so I just had my husband put a little bit of tapioca on the counter here so that I could finish making the loaf. This is the loaf that I just made. This is the beauty of this bread, is that you can make this loaf any shape you want. You can make it into rolls, you can do whatever you want that way. But in the long run, you're gonna end up with a loaf, whatever, if it's gonna be round or if it's gonna be long, whatever shape you want. Make a few cuts across it with your knife. If you want to be more creative and decorative about it, that's fine. When you make this bread, use whatever flours appeal to you, whatever works in terms of your food sensitivities. Make it the way you want. Don't hesitate to experiment a little bit. As far as I'm concerned, all cooking is an experiment anyway. So make it any way you want, okay? It's your own creation, and go out there and have fun with it. I'm gonna bake this And it should be done about the time I have the salad ready. So it takes about, 45 minutes in the oven. So we'll see how it goes. So my evening meal is going to be a pear, beet, and quinoa salad. That's what we're going to be making. And let's just put this over here. That's my immersion blender. I'm going to make the dressing in that. But I'm going to do the grain in my steamer. In this case, it called for quinoa, and I'm going to be using some wheat berry for the grain. We're going to experiment with that for a little bit. And we'll be using the spring greens. I was finally able to find a really fresh one. I was talking to my husband about this afternoon and explaining that this is a combination of, I counted them on the ingredient list, a combination of 15 different greens. So if you want variety in your green intake, this is the way to do it. We're going to use that, and we're going to use some sliced pear, some beet, which can be roasted or just grated onto the salad fresh. We're going to use ours fresh. We'll be using a little bit of onion, and the dressing is going to be a combination of some really good flavors. It'll have the yellow mustard, the maple syrup, the sunflower seeds, the dill, tiny bit of cayenne, salt and pepper, lemon. Should be delicious. And I'll let you know how that comes out. So here we are, ready to serve our salad. It has the pears, the greens, the carrot and beet mixture, grated carrots and beets, that's all it is. These are wheat berries that we're using, but you could use quinoa or brown rice, any kind of grain. And then some onions over everything, and then we'll be putting our dressing. This will be the dressing that we are going to pour over it. This recipe, again, is from Forks Over Knives. It's the pear, beet, quinoa salad. And I've heard this dressing is delicious on it. And then we'll be serving it with our bread. The bread that just came out of the oven looks to me like I shaped it a little funny. It's more like a cocoon than anything else. And I'm going to be cutting this loaf of bread and serving it with the salad.